Well, time now for our last feature story on the 4 federal ridings on the island. We finish up with Malpeque. About 36,000 people live in Malpeque. It's right in the middle of the province and is largely rural. It begins just east of Summerside in New Annan and stretches to Cornwall. It also includes Cavendish in the northern part of the riding and Crapo in the south. Well, this time around, Malpeque is going to have a brand new MP. And we'll have more with the candidates in just a moment. But first, we'll hear from some people who live in Malpeque. We were there earlier this week to hear about what's important to voters.
On a national basis, I think it's healthcare by far. We have a terrible situation with healthcare issues in PI and across Atlantic Canada, and really just about every province in the country. Most of the funding, I believe, for healthcare is a federal transfer. So they really need funding for more doctors, more nurses, more healthcare professionals right across the piece.
First thing that comes to mind is, it doesn't seem like islanders can afford island homes anymore. I have a decent job. I'm looking at the market, and all the houses are going to out of province people. I can't afford anything really,
Vaccine mandates. I'm pro-vaccine mandate. I basically just want my freedom back. We're travelers, and we like to travel within Canada and outside of Canada, and we have not been out of the province since the COVID broke.
It's healthcare. Healthcare is in a bad way right now. Not enough beds, not enough medical staff, too much wait time, and my mother died not in a good way because of no beds being available in the palliative care when she died. And it really upset me to see her not being able to die with no pain.
Economy, I guess, would be number one. Like I said, concerned about inflation, and I don't feel like it's a Canadian problem. I feel like some of our candidates talk about it like it is, which I don't think is very helpful. I think it's a global problem.
My biggest thing would be probably student loans. I know, especially with COVID going into the last couple of years, it's been pretty tough keeping up with that. So that would be huge for me, and I know a lot of students and friends of mine as well.
What's on my mind? I'm a senior, and under the old age security and CPP, it's hard to make ends meet with everything going up in price, i.e. gas, oil, and food. So my suggestion to whomever party goes in, that the increase at least the old age pension by a livable wage.
Now, the Malpeque riding was firmly Liberal for decades. Wayne Easter was the MP for 28 years, but he's not running again, and the race to replace him is expected to be a competitive one. Here's with more on the candidates is Laura Meter with our feature report.
Conservative candidate Jody Sanderson looks at an old church that's being turned into apartments. It's one of many stops on the campaign trail as he tries to talk to as many people as possible.
I think the key for us is really getting out and making sure people know who I am, they know what the message is.
How you doing, boys?
Sanderson grew up on a farm on the island and then worked in banking in Asia, the Middle East, and throughout Canada. He's here now because he wanted to move his family back to PEI.
I started at the very bottom of a large financial institution. 22 years later, I was running a region of many countries in the Middle East. It was a billion-dollar business. It had hundreds of employees, and I was successful at that. Yourself in the back?
He says the top issue in his riding is shortages of healthcare staff. It's a provincial responsibility, but he says the federal government can help.
I truly feel we need a national solution to what is a crisis right now. People need to have ready access to healthcare.
He says PEI needs to get better at recruiting and keeping staff, as well as speeding up certification for people who have moved here from other countries.
Human resource management, I think, is key.
Subdivision up there.
While out campaigning, Sanderson is also hearing about other worker shortages. A big focus of the Conservative Party is getting people back to work. The Conservatives also plan to create more housing by repurposing federal buildings and using community land trusts for affordable housing. The Tories have also pledged to rebuild the Malpeque wharf on a new site close by. For years, fishermen have been complaining the current location is unsafe.
It's all the harbors on PEI need some form of investment.
Sanderson says a Conservative government would make good decisions to help islanders. Former Provincial Cabinet Minister Heath MacDonald is running for the Liberals in Malpeque. He says his 4 years as Finance Minister and his work on various national committees will help him be a good federal MP.
I think I can contribute on the national stage, and I'm hoping to do that.
He says the number one concern for voters is the need for better health care, and he says the federal government needs to get more involved.
When the federal government and provincial government can get together and to work on health care together, I think is extremely important for islanders.
He hopes federal dollars can bring in more healthcare workers. Other issues he hears about are economic recovery for businesses and concerns about the environment.
Moving forward, I really think that we have to put a lens on climate change on every decision that's made for any industry in any sector. And when that happens, I think we're going to be able to accomplish a lot more.
He says helping businesses with new technologies and innovations will reduce emissions and create jobs. He also says the Liberals' national strategy is helping with housing shortages.
There's been millions of dollars transferred from Ottawa to the province, so I think you have to continue to build on what's there now. All right.
He says if they are re-elected, the federal Liberals will continue to support islanders.
On each of the streets, and they're in number.
Anna Keenan is out with her team, biking and campaigning for the Greens. She placed second in this riding in 2019 and hopes this is her breakthrough year. She says her knowledge of climate science and her work as an environmental advocate can help both PEI and Canada.
I'm very familiar with what different countries are doing to reduce their emissions and be effective, and I think we need to bring some of those ideas back to Canada. I got involved with the Green Party primarily because of climate action, but then once being involved, I saw they had a comprehensive vision for looking after our society and caring for our communities.
She sees the main issues as healthcare, climate change, and affordable housing.
It's not just because there's more people coming from Ontario and Quebec and internationally. It is because there's been an underinvestment in public housing for decades, and also because there's unregulated expansion of Airbnb.
She says the Greens will push for housing for people first, as opposed to real estate as an investment. She says her party wants to cool the housing market. As for healthcare, she says international workers need to be accredited faster. Her party also plans to help people afford greener choices and move away from oil.
It's been $23 billion spent supporting the oil industry with public money in the last 3 years. That's more than $2,300 per Canadian household.
Keenan says she wants people to see her as a credible candidate who knows the issues. Michelle Neal is the NDP candidate running in Malpeque. She says she's a community person who likes to help. She's also a union person who has spent years lobbying governments.
Yeah, and I have no problem speaking up for people. It's what I love to do. I love to help people. So I hope that when people get to know me, or people who already know me in the region, I hope that they will see that I'm the kind of person that can be strong for them, and trying to get our point across that we need, in this case, more doctors, more nurses, better healthcare systems, as far as trying to ensure the proper efficiency for our residents.
She says she's frustrated by the healthcare delays people face, especially for mental health services.
These services themselves are so backlogged. People are just on waiting lists way too long, and these are people who are at risk.
She would also like to see national standards for nursing homes, and she says the federal government needs to invest in harbors in her riding to make them safer.
Because when you have big weather systems, the sandbars shift. And then when the fishers are trying to come in on their boats, especially if they're full, they're very heavy, they're getting caught on these sandbars. And in the past few years, we've had some really scary incidences.
She knows the NDP hasn't got a lot of votes in the past, but she hopes people recognize her as someone who cares and can help. Laura Meter, CBC News, in the Malpeque riding.
Now, the People's Party is running a candidate in Malpeque as well. His name is Christopher Landry, His party's website says he's a father and tradesman, and he wants to make small voices heard in Ottawa. He did not want to do an interview with CBC.